Hey everyone, so this is writing fingering away from the piano, part one. And this is something I'd never even considered until maybe about a week or two ago, and now it is a fundamental part of my practice. Like I'm basically always writing fingering away from the piano now. And it's because recently I had the honor and privilege of these long conversations with Dominic Cheli, head of piano at Tonebase. And well, we found that we both have this uncommon passion and reverence for writing fingering and how important it is, etc. And he had just remarked offhand, like, oh yeah, like I write a lot of fingering away from the piano, and I had to do like a double, triple, or quadruple take. I had never heard of anybody doing this. I had never really thought about it before. We both talked about mental practice a lot and how it is a core part of both of our processes, and that's not always super common amongst pianists. Even if they do some, they don't do it super often. But at least we both did that, and we had that in common. So that was already interesting. But this was somewhere where we deviated. I was like, wait, what? Like, who does that? And how do you do that? And what are the implications of that? So I'm going to talk about that in this video, in the first part of it. So on this channel, I hope to share with you guys strategies, thoughts, mindsets, etc., often of my own creation that hopefully will help you in your piano playing, hopefully other areas of your life as well. So I just felt like I was in the right place at the right time, honestly, because if you guys happen to see my last video, like old-time viewers, I wrote this one-time effort, lifetime return, the incredible power of writing fingering and fast piano progress. You can search that on YouTube. I mean, I'm already enthusiastic about writing the complete fingering because that allows you to start from anywhere in the music, separate or both hands, mentally or physically, without any sort of time delay whatsoever. And in the video that came out last week, I talked about how, in my opinion, for my own process, like I need to write the finger at some point. So the fingering has to be written at some point. It is a one-time effort, and it generates a lifetime return because you always then have the fingering. And so if you want to learn a piece before you die, you might as well write it now, because then you will always have it, and you can write out the fingering in advance for many different pieces. And so this was the mindset that I was in already. I was already very happy, as you could see, very enthusiastic about these recent breakthroughs, because the one-time effort, lifetime return idea, that was still a mindset shift for me. But after he said this, I was like, well, wait a second here. If I can learn to do that too, that has huge implications. I mean, because I was just getting in the mode of wanting to write tons and tons of fingering, and then you're saying that it's actually possible to do it without the instrument. And I'm already away from the instrument tons. I'm already doing mental practice with the music, like on the subway, at the airport, in coffee shops, in random places, and without the sheet music as well too, like just walking around when we're on vacation, when we're waiting in line, etc., etc. So if I can add writing fingering to the bank of things I'm doing away from the piano, I mean, that just changes the entire nature of the game. I've already accepted the premise that writing a lot of fingering is very helpful. It can be done very far in advance, even if it's years out before we learn a piece. And so then this thought, like, wow, like I could write fingering while I'm like lying in bed. I could write fingering while I'm on the couch. I could write fingering like in anywhere that I would have done mental practice with the sheet music. I could just take out a book. Anywhere I could read, really, I could take it out and write it. That was fascinating to me. And it's apparently pretty uncommon. I actually asked him, so how many people other than yourself do this? And basically the answer was none. I was like, how many people are interested in this? And he said, other than you, not really anybody. Like, I've talked with other pianists, and most of them are pretty uninterested in it. And I actually thought that was really interesting. And so then once we started talking about this, I was like, well, I have to credit you. I mean, Dominic Cheli, and he said, he's the most humble, amazing person. And so he's just like, oh, you don't have to like credit me each time. Well, I'm crediting you now if you're watching. And, this is, he said like, oh, I didn't come up with this idea. As far as I know, he came up with this. I'm sure there's other people on the planet that might do this, but we don't know about them at this point. If you're one of those people, comment below. I'd be very interested to know. I'm sure he would as well. Let us know what your experiences have been with this idea of just, literally writing fingering away from the piano, how it's helped you and everything like that. But the mindset frames that he shared with me, I had never heard of before. Now, once it entered my system, my crazy world of my methodologies, if you've seen my channel, and if you haven't, you can explore like the playlists and look around and such. But I found that's very aligned. And so the conversation obviously became very engaging. And he just said that he'll do it in all sorts of different contexts in his personal and professional life. And so since I'd had these breakthroughs recently, like I mentioned, in terms of one-time effort, lifetime return for fingerings, any situation that could cause things to become more enjoyable and more sustainable are valuable to me. And I love practicing in different environments. I love not depending on I think pianists are overly dependent on the instrument a lot of the time. And so when I have the opportunity not only to do mental practice, but even to write the fingering, like when I'm looking at the piece, even for the first time, and I'm in a coffee house, or I'm on the New York City subway, or I'm at the airport, I'm freed from the constraints of the instrument, and it's just interesting, it's engaging, it's like kind of like puzzle solving or Sudoku or something, even though I don't do that. And so that obviously I'm very motivated to do this because it's mixing things up in a way that I hadn't even considered before. And I originally thought like, oh man, my wife and I are starting to travel a little bit more, maybe I'll have to rent an instrument to write fingering. And I just never considered just doing it without the instrument. So this just goes how to show if you're in the right place at the right time, just a single idea can kind of shift everything. And so now I had thought like maybe I can't write fingering away from the piano, because what if I do it wrong? And it was very interesting, some of the things that Dominic or Dom that he shared with me. And I'll go into that more in part 2 of the video, but basically, like, even if I were to write incorrect fingering, I'm still going to learn something from it when I get back to the piano. So I'll come back to that more, just a little teaser for the next video. I'll talk about a few other things that'll be in the next video as well too. But in any case, you can see that I'm clearly enjoying this a lot. It's been very exciting for me. I actually shared this with my students. And I don't think that it's just professional pianists that would benefit from this idea. I think he's actually been really undervaluing this idea, because even students, amateurs, like, many people, the vast majority of people who are not doing this professionally for a living, just writing a little bit of fingering away from the piano doesn't have to be a ton, and then you come back to the piano, you can really learn something from doing that in terms of your hands or the distribution of keys on the instrument and so on. And so it's not such a bad thing to like make mistakes, so to speak. You will be able to correct it when you come back to the instrument, and a lot of the things may have been correct from the start. So anyway, so now because I'm starting to do this, I'm starting to have even a much greater quantity and quality of outputs of writing fingerings. I mean, to be frank, like now it's like I've actually been very, very consistent with my piano practice. And piano practice I consider to include these things, to include mental practice, to include writing fingerings. And sometimes I'm frankly exhausted at the end of the day after a long day of teaching, and I might still have 2 more hours of practice that I want to do. And so I might just be lying on the couch or lying in bed, just writing fingerings for like 1 or 2 hours for a piece that I want to learn sometime in this life. And actually, let me see, I think it's in my bag here. So yeah, like really, like anywhere that we might go, I might take this out. I actually did this while we were waiting in line recently also, while we were waiting outside. This is actually the Chopin Ballades, Henley edition of the Chopin Ballades. So what I did recently was, and I don't play these pieces. Also, these fingerings, I'm sure I'm going to change like a good amount of them, but I actually wrote out the complete fingering for both the 3rd Ballade and the 4th Ballade. And, disclaimer, I have not checked all of this at the piano yet, so if you freeze frame and you're like, that's a really terrible idea for fingering, please forgive me. Because after I write the finger away from the piano, the idea is that then I'll go to the instrument and then I will check and see if those were good ideas. And then, of course, I can make adjustments. So, yeah, if it's good fingering, obviously I keep it. If it's bad fingering, so to speak, then I'll adjust it and then I'll learn something from it. So it's really a win-win situation. And so, I've done this really like in so many different areas now. Like it really has become a core part of my practice and my life. Let me see if I can find actually. Okay, so here's a little picture that my wife took this while we were waiting in line for like this opening of like a store. I was just the one person, obviously, in line that was just writing fingering, and we were online for like 45 minutes, and so it was actually really nice. Like I got a lot of work done, just the same as I would have if I were at home, really. So now, if you want to work up to gradually writing more fingering away from the piano, I would recommend just starting with like a few measures first, because look, normally it's like, oh, what fingering should this chord be? Well, let me try playing it, and that's actually the answer key. I think we're too dependent on the instrument a lot of times. So then you play, and you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be this. Actually, sometimes if it's a simple like Alberti bass figuration, you might look at it and be like, oh, it could just be like 5-3-1-3-1-3, 5-3-1-3-1-3, and then you don't even really need to check it. I mean, with just like a few measures or a chord or a simple little figuration, you can write like a little bit, like while you're sitting at the piano, just write it. Okay, now try playing it. Now check. Oh, actually, I'm right. Oh, actually, there's this one that's off. And that's already writing fingering away from the piano because you wrote for like just a tiny little bit before you then checked the answer key being the piano or you playing the piano. So how about this? Instead of just doing that tiny little figuration, how about writing out the fingering for, let's say, 4 entire measures? That's not so bad, right? You can be sitting at the piano and then you check afterwards. How about writing the fingering for 8 measures? So you go into your kitchen, you go into your living room, you go to next time you're traveling, just write fingering for just 8 measures of your piece, right? Very actionable little thing, or whatever a little section is for you. Not a huge risk if you're afraid of risk. And then when you go back home, I think you'll be surprised and interested, very interested in how much you got right. How much of this logic puzzle did you get right? And you might be surprised. I mean, I guess if you're a beginner, you might be totally off base, and then you learn tons, actually, as a result. If you're a little bit more experienced, then you will find that some things you're correct. Some things you're like, okay, there's a 100% chance that's going to be right, and indeed it was right. And other things, you'll be surprised, like, wow, I actually knew more than I thought. And then other areas, you'll be like, oh, I was actually totally off base here, and now I've learned something new. So all of it is very, very interesting, whether you get it right or wrong. Is it necessary to, and so that if you can do that with like groups of 4 measures, 8 measures, etc., obviously you can then increase the size of the sections you're doing away from the piano. And believe it or not, I don't think it's an insane idea for even like anybody that's past like total beginner, like at least you know what it is that you're doing. You're not a total beginner. You have some knowledge. You've already written some fingerings. You have some knowledge of fingering. I don't think it's an insane idea to write the fingering for an entire piece away from the piano. Maybe it should be below the level of the most difficult pieces you've played at first. If you want to start there, you could write it for a simple 1-page piece or 2-page piece, and then go back to the piano and check. And the worst case is that you have to change every single fingering, but at least it was an interesting exercise, and then you'll have learned a lot of things. Is it necessary to have a teacher to implement the idea? I don't think that it is, actually. And that's also very compelling. So obviously a teacher would be able to improve your actual knowledge of fingering through traditional means, progressive means, could be scales and arpeggios, could be study of pieces, back and forth conversation. This fingering is good because of this fingering isn't as good because of this. 95% of pianists would use this is why. 50% of pianists would use this is why. This is one of 8 different solutions, this is why. But you are your own teacher if you don't have a teacher, and you're also your own teacher every moment that you're away from your current teacher, right? So whatever knowledge of fingering you have now, let's assume that it's some knowledge. You don't have zero knowledge, right? You have some knowledge of how to write fingering. Whatever knowledge you have now, well, you test whatever that knowledge is when you're away from the piano. So you have an 100% if you're at the piano. How good is your knowledge of fingering writing? Isn't it interesting to try to see how close to 100% you can get when you're away? So you're away from the piano now. You have a standard of 100% when you're at the piano, but now you're away from the piano. You try writing a good amount. You might find that 85% of fingerings, you don't need the instrument. And then the 15% that you have to check afterwards and then correct, you have learned something new. And that's very interesting. So I'm just fascinated by this. And I actually searched YouTube. I searched writing fingering, piano, and I found various, like, people debate, should I write fingering or should I not write fingering? Just so you guys know, I've done, like, I've tried writing no fingering. I'm a good enough pianist that I can do that. I can sight read through things. I don't need to write fingering. I still think it's extremely helpful for the reasons I already gave. So I advocate writing fingering. I saw other things in terms of how much to write. I didn't find any results for writing fingering away from the piano. So this really could be Dominic's original idea. I don't really know. So anyway, so hopefully you find this interesting. Now, a little bit more previews of the next video, or more of a preview of the next video. How writing fingering can be more creative away from the piano, how it helps mental practice, and how mental practice helps it, writing fingering, that is. I already talked a little bit about how writing the correct fingering away from the piano saves time, how writing the incorrect fingering always teaches you something new about your hands and about the piano itself. Other things, how desirable difficulty, delayed feedback, and teaching students relate to the idea of writing fingering away from the piano. How we might account for hand redistribution, other fingering-related concepts and non-fingering related concepts, and how writing fingering away from the piano is a skill to be cultivated. I will expand on that a little bit more in part 2. So if you found this interesting, please like, subscribe, let other people know about the channel, and let me know your questions and everything. Very, very grateful to Dominic, obviously. Dominic, or Dom as I call him. So it's honestly been a game-changing idea for me, and I think it really may be saving me years of time. So thank you, Dom. Okay, and looking forward to the next one, you guys. Bye.